is also very much about what we need to be doing now to get ourselves ready to hopefully reopening our doors and welcoming guests again come July. And we have some great guests on this afternoon as well to help us highlight some key points with regards to that. We have Sue Clark, Sales and Marketing Manager at Cumbria Tourism, and Karen Thorn, who owns Hopton House B&B and also runs the B&B Academy. And they will both be talking with me a little bit later on, highlighting some recommendations and ideas about reopening later. As I mentioned at the start of all these webinars, they really are an opportunity for us to come together, share our ideas and thoughts, and hopefully inspire each other to be ready for when we open. We know you are a bunch of really innovative and entrepreneurial people in the independent accommodation sector. So thank you again for everyone who sent through ideas and questions during the week. You can do that on the eviivo, on the events@eviivo.com email address. And today we very much like anyone that wants to ask questions to do so using the Zoom chat function, which you can find at the bottom of your window, just off to the center. James will be monitoring any information that comes in, and any general questions we'll try and get to today, or we can pick up at, say, a later date. Good stuff. So without further ado, we'll hand over to David Weston for an update. David.
Hi everybody. It's great to see you all, and thank you again to eviivo for inviting me to join this webinar. Just for people who haven't seen me before or been on one of the webinars or aren't members, we are the trade association for B&Bs, guest houses and small hotel owners. So we're here to inform, support and represent you, fight your corner with governments and regulators. And I set on a thing called the Visitor Economy Working Group, which is chaired by the Tourism Minister, Nigel Huddleston. We had a meeting just about an hour ago this afternoon. It's weekly, so I report a little bit from that. Lots going on. Recently, Paul was talking about opening dates. Yes, we're all focusing on those. Northern Ireland has just, a couple of days ago, brought their opening date forward to the 3rd of July. So it's now their opening soonest, 3rd of July. The opening date for hotels, B&Bs, guest houses in England is still scheduled for the 4th of July, but it's not yet firm. The government have not firmed it up. We've been pushing really hard, and so is everybody in the sector, for them to confirm that date, because it's getting close. It's 2 weeks from this coming Saturday. Our colleagues in retail only got 6 days notice before they were confirmed opening, but we hope we get longer than that. We've been pressing for them to confirm it within the next day or two. Scotland's 15th of July, and Wales haven't yet confirmed a date for their opening, and their First Minister's been saying rather disappointing, slightly negative things about opening tourism this summer, which is a pity. Again, we're pushing them to confirm a date and to also extend any help. If people are going to be kept closed longer in Wales, then they should provide more help, financial help for them. Just briefly going through other things, the 2 meters social distancing guidelines, we've been pressing for many weeks on the Visitor Economy Working Group that should be reviewed. The World Health Organization recommend 1 meter, not 2, and 24 other countries have reduced their social distancing guidelines. The scientists say it's not set in stone and it's a political decision, so we think it should be made now. It's the difference between people being viable and not being viable, so many livelihoods depend on that. And there was a lot of discussion at this afternoon's meeting with the Tourism Minister on that, and it links very much with the draft guidance. We're waiting for official government guidance and also the so-called protocols, the UK Hospitality guidance specifically for accommodation businesses, which is much more practical than the government guidance. Sorry if it's confusing for everybody, but there's going to be government guidance released any day now, we hope, which is very broad and general principles, quite high level, not very practical, so not very helpful for a small business like a B&B or a guest house, although it gives general principles. So what is the nearest we're going to have to official detailed practical guidance will be the UK hospitality protocols, which we've shared on these webinars, and it's on our coronavirus page at the B&B Association website. We've shared earlier drafts. That's with the government and Public Health England and the Health and Safety Executive to sign off any day now. So any day now, those will become official. The problem is it's a sort of chicken and egg situation with that and the 2 meter thing. If the 2 meter is going to be reviewed, which it is being reviewed, if it's going to change, then obviously all of that detailed guidance will need all revising again. So at our meeting with the Minister this afternoon, we very clearly said that we'd rather have the date, the 4th of July date, firmed up now, even if we knew that the guidance was going to have to be changed between now and then. We'd rather have the date firmed up so we could all confirm bookings and all know where we were, and then live with changing the guidance later. It would be a sort of positive change. It would help us. So we said we'd rather have that than wait until, you know, the last minute, readjust all the guidance and then confirm the date, you know, the day before we open. We said that would be just a nightmare. So and the minister, to be fair, said he very, very clearly understood and got the message, and they're passing that on to Downing Street and Cabinet Office. Kite marks, there's 2 kite marks being developed. One we heard about this webinar last week from Visit Britain. That's going to be announced soon. Today, the AA launched their they call it COVID Confident mark. It's free for anyone to apply to have, and there's a link which we'll be sharing on this on the chat of this webinar, or go to our website later for it if you like. So that there's at least 2 national schemes that will come up which people can apply for, and show consumers that they're safe to book with them and stay with them. Couple more things quickly. One is the Scottish Hardship Fund was launched this week. We'd been pressing for a while for another of the gaps in Scotland was B&Bs that have personal bank accounts. They found that they were ruled out of the previous help because they didn't have a business bank account. We then pressed the Scottish Government because we said lots of small B&Bs, I think 45% of the small ones paying council tax, operate with a personal bank account, and that's something that's been happening for years, and HMRC are quite happy with it. So now the Scottish Government have put £3 million to a B&B Hardship Fund, which pays out grants of £3,000 to people who've not had previous help from other schemes and who've got a personal bank account. That's open this week, and James just shared the link on the chat. Finally, the last thing to mention was this, it's a hot issue at the moment, the rules on the government accommodation rules currently say that if there's a guest staying in holiday accommodation and shows signs of COVID, that they should self-isolate where they are, which means, and again, that's just come up on the chat, so thanks for that, James. There's the link to the government rules. So that means that guests would have to isolate with you for up to 14 days. And that opens up massive amount of questions and problems. Who pays for that? Do you have to serve them 3 meals a day for 14 days? How does any medical care work? What happens to your other guests? All of these things. So we've basically, and all our colleagues, UK Hospitality and the self-catering associations have all said it's unworkable, and that needs a rethink. And we heard today from the Minister, Nigel Huddleston, that that is, with the Cabinet Office, being looked at for a rethink in the guidance. So that was just a very quick mention of various recent issues, and I'm happy to, try to answer any questions.
Thanks, David. Just a couple of questions that are coming through on the chat. First of all, about the actual risk assessments themselves. Is there any links or any kind of reference material that hosts can access the risk assessment templates from?
Yes, on the coronavirus page on the B&B Association website, there's a few links to guidance. It's got the latest draft of the UK hospitality protocols, which have a couple of risk assessment templates in there. There's also some examples from the self-catering risk assessments from PASC, the Professional Association of Self-Caterers, which are quite useful. So there's various examples on there. We are waiting to see the final UK hospitality guidance once the government publish it, and we've heard from UK hospitality today that the government have made a few changes and are about to any day now publish it. We don't know what changes those are going to be, but as soon as it comes out, we'll obviously let members know, and we'll put any extra guidance that we can at that point online. But we're in a bit of a limbo at the moment because things have been going around through various government departments and possibly being altered before they're actually published officially. But
is that the reason for the delay, David? Do we think it's because they're still sort of making the final calls on that, which I guess is a positive if it's going to go down from 2 meters at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's going through lots of processes. The Public Health England looking at it, the Health and Safety Executive, the Cabinet Office, and Number 10 Downing Street all signing off all these things. And don't forget, they're all looking at guidance for every other sector of industry at the same time. So there's a bit of a backlog with all these things and trying to tie things up together. So we've tried to disentangle the 2 meter thing from the rest of it and said, look, give us the date first. Finalize the date so we know where we are. We can all, because everyone's got bookings or wants to accept more bookings, and you don't know whether somebody books from the 5th of July you can take it or not. So we've said that's the absolute vital thing ASAP today, if ideally. But yeah, but there are 1 or 2 examples on those links.
Great.
And more
David, a few questions around, have you any kind of inside knowledge about the gap that the government's going to require between bookings? Is that something we're going to have to wait for? Have you got an indication what that's likely to be?
With just the caveat that we don't know if this will suddenly is being changed while we're talking. Unless that happens, the draft UK hospitality guidance was that you need to leave no gap normally between bookings. But if you have a guest that shows symptoms of COVID, then you are advised to leave after they leave 3 days, 72 hours, 72-hour gap. But only that's after symptoms, guests with symptoms. Normally, you don't have to build in a gap of a day between guests, but obviously the protocols and guidance does have lots of information about enhanced cleaning measures and all sorts of other things that we've talked about previously.
Great.
But no, you don't have to leave an extra day's gap or anything between every guest.
Perfect. David, I've got a question here. It's quite a long question from one of our attendees up in Keith, from Stephen Crompton. Rather than me articulate it badly, Stephen, I'm going to try and unmute your connection so you can pose this question to David. This is about sort of guests turning up with COVID symptoms. So Stephen, I'm passing over to you. I hope you can hear, we can see you.
Okay. Yeah, the question was that if the guests turn up at our door and they're showing signs, or we believe they're showing signs of COVID, do we let them in? What are our regulations, our rights on that? And then I think you touched on it earlier that if they come down for breakfast and they've got signs, then, how do we stand with that one?
That's a very good question, Stephen, and it's one where everyone will want to know the definitive answer. In the UK hospitality, the draft protocols, they say if somebody arrives with, seems to have symptoms, then you're advised to say no, that you can't stay with us, you should go home. That obviously presents a lot of problems in itself, but that's the advice there. And as I said earlier, the advice, if they are already staying with you and then have symptoms, currently the advice is, the government's own advice is that they should stay and self-isolate where they are, which we say is unworkable, and we need to maybe have other alternatives to that. So it's a very difficult situation, and a lot of people, I think, are so worried by that one issue that we've heard people say that alone means that they don't particularly want to open yet, if somebody might have to self-isolate there with COVID. So that's why we're pressing for guidance on that. That's just the guidance itself. There's a whole load of other legal issues, which I think you're implying as well. What happens if you turn people away? And that could potentially be difficult, strictly legally. But we do think that if you're taking the interest of your other guests and your family and staff into account and saying, sorry, we don't think you should stay here because you've got symptoms and it's not fair on our other guests, we think it'd be extraordinarily unlikely that any court would agree with your guests and say you should be forced to take them with symptoms. I mean, that you're doing the right thing by saying, no, I can't put my other guests and my family at risk. So we think that would be the thing to do, and you'd be backed up by law. But in theory, all the normal laws apply, and people have got the right to come and stay if they've booked and things. But it's going to be a bit of an unknown situation with a lot of these issues, which is not satisfactory at all, I know.
Probably a takeaway for us, I think, and James, maybe we can pick this up after today, but to see what other European destinations are doing that are already open. David, do you have any idea what the guidance is there? Or maybe we can sort of look into that for our marketing managers in the different countries.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I don't know enough about what's happening in other countries to comment properly.
Sure.
Here. I think we need to have a look at that. That would be a good idea because so many are opening now or are open already. Yeah. But of course, that doesn't necessarily help with what the rules would be here.
No,
I mean,
of course.
How they've done it elsewhere may be different. But yeah.
But if there was a more practical solution in Germany that maybe we could highlight, possibly it would could help.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum, that one, isn't it? To be fair.
Great.
It's very difficult. Yes.
So David, there's lots of very specific questions which maybe we can kind of share with you after the webinar. Maybe kind of content for the coronavirus portal. Couple of just a very general one, and it's a general theme in terms of the impact on insurance. Is that something that I'm guessing the guidelines, so when the guidelines are being sort of created, is the impact on insurance being considered at the same time, and will the guidance include insurance and insurance kind of black holes?
I think probably, disappointingly, the answer is no to that, because the guidance has really been developed on a health-based basis hugely. So it's all about preventing infection by COVID, and insurance is a massive issue, and again was raised today with the tourism minister and the officials there at our meeting earlier, that all sorts of businesses, and it's not just accommodation businesses, but all sorts of businesses in the travel and leisure sector are finding that they can't get insurance easily or viably at all for the future ongoing now. Of course, there's another issue about insurance for business interruption for COVID, which is there's some legal cases ongoing about that. But for the future, getting insurance for a lot of these things, they're excluding COVID. So that is a huge issue in itself, which the government are going to have to address in some way, because it's going to get difficult to get cover, for instance, for a big event or anything of any sort. It's going to exclude COVID and any other similar epidemic.
Great. And then the kind of last thing is just a kind of point, and whether, because obviously some people on the chat are kind of saying that they've done their own risk assessments, and some of them have done it, whilst they've been accepting key workers. Is there anywhere where properties can share things that they've done? Is that something that they can share on the B&B portal, or is there any other kind of resource that where people can share their own best practice?
That's a good idea, and well done for doing it. I mean, it's people who've already done that. That you're ahead of the game to some extent, and obviously, if you've been open during lockdown for key workers, that's great, and you've probably learnt a lot. But yes, you're very welcome to email them to the B&B Association. We'll look at how we can maybe share examples, because in fact, the more examples people have, the better in a sense. And you all have to do your own, and the point is everyone's got to think their own through. But it does help to see the sorts of things other people do. Not that you should just blindly copy them, obviously, but it just helps to see the kind of ways other people approach them. So yes, do share them with us, and we'll share them with others. On that basis, we'll pick a few and share to give it more examples that other people can find helpful. Great.
And here's a question, one that's close to my heart. Have you, during your discussions with government, have you had any kind of movement on the 14-day quarantine for international visitors coming to the UK? Is that something you've had any movement on, or not?
Well, the short answer is no, not yet. But they, believe me, they're fully aware that there's absolutely huge strength of feeling from the whole of the sector, and it's not just accommodation, hotels, B&Bs, guest houses, but it's also all the aviation sector, the outbound tour operators, and inbound tourism, which is all being massively affected by this quarantine issue. And a number of airlines are taking the government to court. In fact, one of the officials on our meeting this afternoon said he couldn't comment on the government decision-making processes about quarantine because of the legal action that was currently being taken against the government. So they are very, very well aware of a massive effect on the whole industry. And I think it seems almost certain that the quarantine the blanket quarantine will be finished at the end of this month, and the 29th of June there'll be air corridors. But that hasn't been confirmed. But they did say they were an active consideration. So transport corridors, because it includes not just air but ferries and Eurostar as well.
Got you. Great. David, I have got lots of questions for you. So we've not been able to answer your question directly. We will make sure that these get to David after the webinar, and we'll post the content on the B&B website, the B&B Association website, and also on eviivo.com. So thank you for that. So Paul.
Good stuff, yeah. So thanks for that, guys, and thanks everyone for all their questions, really useful. Obviously, I know there's so many out there at the moment as we're getting ready to open up, and sorry that we can't answer them all, but we will endeavour to get to those other ones after this directly. Before we move on to the first guest of the day, I just wanted to highlight a couple of sets of guidelines that have come out over the past sort of week or so, David, and that's the Fulcher Island guidelines and also the Professional Association of Self-Catering guidelines for the UK. And whilst they're sort of country and market specific relatively, a lot of the information in those and the subjects that we're talking about here in terms of the cleaning, in terms of the risk assessments and so on, is quite generic, isn't it? So as a first sort of pass, or if you wanted to try and get ahead of the game and have a look at those, they could be a good source to have a look through.
Yes, exactly. That's true. We've put those on our coronavirus page, on the B&B Association coronavirus page, that I think James has linked to earlier. Because, yes, as Paul says, the Irish Republic official guidelines, although they don't legally apply, obviously, in the UK, they're quite well done and useful. So it's just good background to look at them. And the Professional Association of Self-Catering guidelines, again, which I mentioned earlier, they've allowed us to share as well, because everyone's taking this opportunity to say we want to inform everyone. We're the same. We don't hide the guidelines for members only. We're trying to inform everybody. So yes, there's good stuff in the self-catering one as well, and especially on cleaning products as well as cleaning protocols.
And I thought Fortune Island one's very well written. It's sort of done that job of taking the official guidelines, if you like, as you sort of mentioned earlier, David, but then stripping out what's really needed in sort of practical terms and putting that in clear wording, but also some good diagrams. The page I particularly like is sort of showcasing what a bedroom's going to potentially look like once people can come and stay again, and what won't be there, what needs to be given attention to with regards to being clean for touch points and things like this, and what's going to be the new norm for a guest as well, and obviously having that communicated with them.
Yes, as we said last time, it's going to be the new normal is going to be very different for guests and for hosts. It can be quite tough for hosts in some ways, but it's going to be different for guests too, and they're going to have to also be responsible, like we all are, in respecting the rules and social distancing and things while they're staying with us.
Definitely. And on the PASC ones, I'm just looking at it here, that cleaning checklist I thought in particular was handy as well. Obviously, cleaning levels are going to need to be upped, and there's certain extra things that people need to be doing to make properties COVID safe. So a handy checklist like that, okay, it's for self-catering, but again, cleaning, a very generic subject, a good point to start, if nothing else.
Very much so.
Good stuff. Okay, so as David says, those links are on the B&B Association website, also on the eviivo.com/coronavirus page, and well worth a read. The Irish ones in particular, I think, are really worth a read. And obviously, we have Irish people on the call as well, so you have those guidelines there now. Use them, and hopefully they'll set you up well for getting ready for bookings returning. In Northern Ireland, at least on the 3rd. It's interesting that they're the first ones going now, so that's great. Good stuff. Okay, thanks again, David. Now we'll bring in our first guest today, and that's Sue from Cumbria Tourism. Hello, Sue, are you there?
I'm here, thank you very much. Thanks for asking me as well. Yeah, I'm pleased to be here, and hello everybody. I can't see you all, but hello.
So much for being on and sparing your time today. Maybe you can just sort of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to sort of work for Cumbria Tourism.
Yeah, I've worked for Cumbria Tourism for sort of 9-10 years now, and up until 2015, I had a guest house in Ambleside in Cumbria. Really lucky, and I live by the coast at Grange-over-Sands, which is equally lovely. Very sunny. It's been sunny all the way through lockdown here. My background's advertising and marketing. So we did 15 years in the guest house, but the last 5 I was also working for Cumbria Tourism as well, because I knew that we were trying to sell the business. Basically, my husband was at retirement age, and obviously I have to keep him in the manner that he's accustomed to. So, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. We came through sort of floods and famine and foot and mouth, as I would say, as well, whilst we were in the guest house. But I have to say, even going through that, nothing compares to this.
No, that's it's very, very sort of focused and small compared to what we're faced with now, unfortunately, isn't it? But
yeah, absolutely.
Uniquely positioned then to have seen it from both sides in terms of what you're facing now. And I know one of the things that you're really focusing on at the moment is sort of bringing back confidence for people to be able to travel again and to kind of come to Cumbria as it sort of opens.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a tricky balance. You know, it's we've all been locked down for 3 months, haven't we? Life's very different.
Yeah.
You know, who thought we could all work remotely? And you know, it's just we've all learnt a new vocabulary, as we were saying the other day on the phone as well. We have here, we've got a balance between, you know, we're a working area. We've got people that live here as well. But tourism is crucial to the Cumbrian economy. You know, it's generally worth over £3 billion, and it's decimated as so. We are at recovery. That's what we're looking forward to at the moment. You know, I have to say, as a marketing manager, putting the message out to close the Lake District in Cumbria, I even when I mention it now, I get goosebumps. I never thought I would be doing that, asking visitors not to come. It's I don't think I'm ever going to get over that. So now we're trying to gently sort of say, no, we need you to come, we need you to start booking. The visitor economy is opening up here. Historic houses have their gardens open, and you know, you can hire a boat on a little one of the electric little boats on Windermere from Saturday. So you know, it's the castles are open with their ground takeaways. Our communities have done wonders through this crisis as well of adapting, and our cash and carry businesses have been delivering to us, you know, as consumers, and there's lots of it, I think, that we really hope will carry on. And you know, the businesses have adapted really well. We can get Simon Rogan he'll deliver food to you in the evening, you know, Michelin star chefs, brilliant. But no, we're now very, very much on to the recovery and trying to get the messaging out to both our businesses and our visitors, that you can now, you know, soon, hopefully, you know, you can come up for the day, absolutely fine, and hopefully soon you'll be able to come overnight, and we can, you know, as a destination, we can deliver you an awesome experience, but safely.
Definitely. And that messaging is so important right now, isn't it? Both from the tourism board side of things, but for businesses as well, to be putting it onto their websites and highlighting what the local region is doing, what's open.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just carried out a piece of visitor research. I know there's lots and lots of research out there, but we've just carried out a visitor specific, and quite late in the process, sort of last couple of weeks. And we sort of to over sort of 3,000 respondents we got back from it.
Wow.
And the headlines of that is it's a mixed bag. You've got nearly half of the people that responded couldn't wait to get out, you know, couldn't wait to come. But then again, 44% of that group also felt cautious about making any unnecessary trips. So, you know, you can define that to within 10 miles of your home, really, can't you?
Sure.
So we have to look at our recovery plans with the research in mind. You know, so we're planning, as a destination, we're planning a recovery campaign that goes through until 2022, because things are going to take a while to get back. Our businesses, like everybody, is, you know, this 3-winter approach. You know, it's going to be tough for a while. So we're trying to support that message, but also try and get everybody to sort of say the same things, that come here, come safely, because as businesses we have to protect ourselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there's lots of great information on your website about what Cumbria is doing, but also what businesses in Cumbria should be doing as well. And as with much of this advice, it is very generic. So, you know, May James just popped up the links there. Useful for people to look at in terms of thinking about messaging on their own websites too. I know when we spoke in the week, it's good to link into your sort of local tourist board or your DMO, isn't it, to kind of have that feed of information coming through.
Yeah, definitely, and for the support as well. Your local DMO should be giving you support. I hope that our members think that, because we're working 24 hours a day. Well, not 7 days a week, but maybe we do get a break sometimes. And trying to get that information and support out as quickly as we can. And I think all through, I think I said this to you the other day, Paul. All through this, and I would put my guest house head back on. At no time, unlike this time, is we have to communicate to our visitors. So, and it's from the giving them the confidence to book. So it's right, having the right information on your website is key. It always surprises me how many people don't even have contact details on their website, a phone number to ring. And I know it's been hellish with cancellations and all of that. But now, as we open up, the visitors need that confidence to book. So they need to know that your terms are as flexible as they possibly can be. And also, I know when you get to a certain size of business, you have to put your risk assessment on your website. But I would encourage you, even if it's just, you think, oh my God, that's my risk assessment. But as a visitor, it will give confidence because you've thought about it. You've gone through, you've thought about where your main pinch points are, how you've mitigated the risk, and they can see that you're prepared. The other thing I was sort of saying to businesses as well is tell people what you're doing differently, not what you're not doing. Don't be as negative, but we're doing, as I said, there's wonderful things coming out of this. But if you are doing less contact with your guests there, your regular guests might be a bit shocked. Sorry if I'm teaching you stuff eggs here, by the way, but it's what you're doing differently can be a really good USP, really good selling point, because you've thought about it. And you might be doing really quirky things. We've got a lady not far from me she's very lucky. Her B&B's got a lovely patio out front that overlooks Morecambe Bay. I mean, have your breakfast there.
Ideal.
I've booked this weather for the rest of the summer, and into the winter. And that's a really sort of nice thing she's doing. So she's not got as many people in her breakfast room at that time.
Of course.
And I say communicate, whether it's through your website and with the guests as they're coming. The other thing we've seen a rise of in the last few weeks are different types of visitors coming up for the day from other areas, particularly for us, sort of northwest. Our key audience is normally 2.5, 3 hour drive time from here. We've had a lot of people from Liverpool here. So what I'm looking at the moment is how, because they might usually go to Wales, and sadly with Wales not being sort of you able to go there at the moment. So as a marketing manager, I'm now thinking, how can I market to that, to those that new audience, if you like. I mean, we get a lot of Liverpudlians up here anyway, but I know we've had some of the research that's been done by the National Park has shown that there's a lot of new visitors up here. So we're looking at how we can capitalise on that.
Exactly, and you have to, don't you? And that sort of thinking is true of accommodation business as well, or any sort of attraction. If something isn't open, can you capitalise on that? But also, I think more importantly is how do you do that? Is there other markets there that you haven't perhaps tapped into in the past that you can now? You might need to be revisiting that if you're not getting an influx of overseas tourism at the moment. What other pockets of the country can you target, or what other types of guests can you target with the activities you do, or the location you are close to other things to see and do? So it's thinking outside and thinking a bit wider, isn't it? I guess if your typical clientele is maybe over 70, perhaps they're not going to want to travel so much at the moment. How can you get a different target market in?
Yeah, and I think what I said to you the other day is it's a bit like rip up the rule book and start again. Don't assume that your guests, even your regular guests, don't assume they know what you do. So it's giving them that information on on your websites and in your marketing of what they can do whilst they're here. That's what I've spent. My web developer is off this week, so I've actually spent most of the day putting on our website, on our visitor website, who's open. And it's a bit like the blind leading blind, but I'm getting there. It's that information's changing all the time. So if you are linked with a DMO, just click off, use their content. Nothing's original, and just so they've got that reason to come, that they don't know that what's in the moment, we're getting one side or the other. People have come to Cumbria because it's Cumbria, but then we've got other people. That's great, but what are we going to do while we're there? You know, are the loos open? Can we go for a walk? So it is like going back to square one, if you like, a bit like what we had to do during foot and mouth. You know, you just mark it to a slightly. We were a walkers bed and breakfast, just or guest house in Ambleside. That was our trade.
Sure.
And we knew the footpaths were closed. So at the time, you advertised in the press a lot. I put a couple of adverts in the Daily Express, and I doubled my database of people that were generally over 60 because they didn't necessarily come to walk. I had, you know, a totally different guest than I would normally have, and we kept them for years. It's great.
That's a great point. So sort of revisiting your USPs. Don't take things, don't take for granted that people will know what you're good at. Make it super obvious for them to be able to see what you're good at and want to come. And hopefully that way you'll tap into different target markets as well, different demographics, and hopefully fill the gaps of those people that, you know, from your survey you said may be thinking twice about coming at this particular time. It's really interesting. Another thing that we mentioned when we had a chat earlier in the week that would be great to sort of mention now was, you know, calling people. I think you mentioned that just picking up the phone at this time.
I said from the moment we could see what was going to happen with this, and I suppose again being sort of with my guest house head on, I said to my team straight away, when people are emailing you, pick up the phone and talk to them. And I've tried to do that all the way through this process with our Cumbria Tourism members, but I think that goes to visitors as well. Equally at this time, I think they want reassurance of safety. Businesses want reassurance of safety. If you've opened that line of communication at this stage, you'll have it all the way through, and if God forbid something goes wrong, you've got that relationship built already. I mean, this is the perfect. I'm a bit of a banger honor about direct bookings anyway. At the best of times, you know, even though we run a website, it's book through your DMO kind of thing. But direct bookings are key to this, I think. It's that relationship with the guests before they actually come. You know, some people won't. Some people will still book through Booking.com. They'll be happy enough to do that, but it's the guests want at the moment. We want them to be as flexible as we are, I think.
Yeah, and that personal touch so important now.
And that is so, you know, the bed and breakfast, that's the lifeblood of us, isn't it? Really, us. Sorry, yeah. It's, you know, that's what makes us special as a bed and breakfast guest house owners, really, isn't it? It's the personal touch. Yeah. That's why people stay with you.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic, Sue. Thank you so much for all that information. Really useful to talk things through. And I can see you miss running that B&B, I think. Yes.
Yeah, I do actually. I do. We had a great time. Fabulous. You know, it was great. We met some lovely people. But as you said, we've got loads of information on our Cumbria Tourism website. If you know, it's as David said, free for all at the moment, isn't it? Members, non-members, everybody. If anybody needs it, if you've got any Cumbrian businesses on here, as we say, just drop us an email, whether you're a member or not, and we'll generally ring you back and talk through any questions that you have. We've been lobbying hard, like everybody else.
Brilliant.
You know.
Thank you, Sue. Fantastic. Before we move on, James, was there any?
A couple actually.
Lots of time.
In terms of one of the things we've put onto the chat is the link to the Company and Tours Board risk assessment page. So there's a lot of, you know, sort of good practical help there. So again, as Paul said, a lot of that information is generic. So do have a look. One of the few questions around, because you talked about communication and it being really important. A lot of the questions are around, you know, how has the tourism board dealt with communications with local residents who might be a little bit nervous or resistant to opening up Cumbria as a destination? Has that been a challenge? Is it, you know, how did you guys go about that?
Yeah, it's been a challenge because we're a small destination with 500,000 people that live here, and we swell obviously with our tourist numbers. So, and I believe we've tested a lot, so our numbers seem quite high. I I mean, any deaths too many, you know. So we're on, I suppose, like any other destination, we're on the resilience and recovery forums with our local enterprise partnership, and what we're doing for resident confidence sort of does build into our recovery plan as well. So it is a balance, and we are working with other organisations to get the messaging out to residents that it's okay. You know, it's when it hopefully will also push the importance of the tourism sector within the county. You know, just how many jobs it covers. And I mean, I generally, if I'm presenting in a real world, I always start with what tourism means for Cumbria at the beginning of a presentation, about how many jobs it supports and economy and blah, blah, blah. So that work's sort of being done with different partners, but we're involved in that, trying to grow confidence.
Wonderful.
Good stuff.
Great.
Thanks again, Sue. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for asking.
Been really, really insightful. Good stuff. Okay, so final guest today then is Karen Thorn. She owns Hopton House in Shropshire and also runs the B&B Academy. Hello, Karen. How are you? James is going to unmute you.
Yeah, hold on.
James, just finding the right button. There we go.
Hi.
How are you doing? Good. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Very welcome. So let's kick off maybe by just finding out a bit about, you know, your background, how you came to run Hopton House, and then sort of how the B&B Breakfast Academy, the Bed and Breakfast Academy evolved out of that.
Yeah, I just want to warn you, we're in the middle of a thunderstorm here, so if I do disappear. Yeah, so quick potted history really. I worked for British Airways in the IT department for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
38, I had a very early midlife crisis and decided I was going to upend the family to go and live in Shropshire. I just didn't want the stress of managing 130 people anymore. So relocated, husband, dog, 2 pet rats at the time, up to South Shropshire. My husband still worked and still works for BA, which is an interesting situation to be in at the moment. But he couldn't afford, we couldn't afford for me to be a kept woman. So I needed to find a job. So I set up the B&B. On paper, I'm a pretty rubbish B&B landlady, really. I hate cleaning with a passion. I'm really not very good at early mornings, and I am an introvert and really happy with my own company. So perfect B&B landlady.
Your reviews would say otherwise, Karen.
Well, yeah, I did manage to get a 5-star gold award. I'm not in the scheme anymore, and 70% of my business is repeat business. My saving grace is I'm quite a good cook. I'm quite well travelled, so I know what a good B&B is, and I'm quite good at making people feel welcome, which I think is the key. Customer service is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm also quite good at marketing. So I've never used any of the OTAs or anything in 16 years. I do all my own marketing. I'm on social media a lot.
As I say, that's very going to be a big challenge, isn't it? That sort of trying to keep the level of service with guests going forwards, sort of after lockdown, because you're not going to be able to have perhaps as much interaction or be as close to them. It's going to be tricky, I would have thought. Have you sort of thought about how you're going to sort of continue to keep that service going?
I think we just got to go back to basics and you know, read our reviews and understand why guests are coming to stay with us, and do our very best to maintain that relationship and maintain that level of service. I think we've got to make it as ordinary as possible for people. You know, people have been through a really stressful time, and what people want after that stressful time or that change is familiarity and going back to somewhere that looks normal. So you know, I hear what Sue's saying about communication, and communication is really important, but I think it's very important not to stick lots of risk assessments and guidelines and that sort of stuff too much into people's faces. I think it needs to be there for them to find if they want it, but trying to maintain some normality, really.
Striking that balance, isn't it, I guess, between reassuring but also trying to make it a normal experience if you can.
Yeah, so you know, on my website I'm going to have my risk assessment will be there, my what we're doing different will be there, but I'll send them a link to it, and if they want to go and see it, they can. So
yeah, sure.
I after 2 years after setting up the B&B, I decided I wanted to run training courses for prospective B&B owners, because when I set up the B&B, there was just no help, no support.
Mm-hmm.
And at BA, I did a lot of training and facilitation, so I thought I would combine my training skills with my B&B experience. So I've been running B&B Academy for 14 years now. I noticed quite a few of my ex students on the call as we came in. It was great to see them.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. We had Kate on the other week from Maple Bank, and she was brilliant, giving her the feedback.
Yeah, and we have this Facebook group of people who have attended the course, which we set up about 4 years ago. It's an amazing group. It's a great community, support each other. You know, you were talking about sharing best practice. We're doing that on a daily basis. So it's
good.
Amazing, really. Yeah.
And what's the feeling there amongst that group now? Are they looking forward to it? Are they excited about reopening? Are they a bit apprehensive, or are there kind of key concerns that they have? Is it similar to what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, it's very similar, and people really differ. You know, you've got some people who are saying it's business as usual and we're not really changing much at all, to other people who are buying UV fogging, ozone generator type machines. You know, and I think, you know, the great thing about sharing the information is everyone can see what other people are doing, but you've got to, I think, decide what's best for you as a business. I mean, I'm certainly not going down the UV machine route, but some people might feel more comfortable about that. So it's working within the guidelines that we're given, you know, those broad and general principles, but working out how it works for you, I think.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? Because there are so many guidelines out there, and there will be, and it is great. And, you know, it's almost sort of using their distilled ones and working out of it what really you can apply and what you want to apply and what works for you. But don't be sort of scared or overpowered by them almost. You still got to sort of stick to your roots to a degree. And at the end of the day, it's a bit like what Sue was saying, your USP is what makes you great. Make sure that's still coming through as well.
Yeah, I mean, we had this ridiculous discussion about cushions the other day on the group, and I'm a bit obsessed with cushions. I can't seem to get past cushions. You know, someone said if we take the cushions out of the room, it's going to look like Premier Inn by the sea. And I have a bit of a problem with cushions because my rescue dog Safi just loves to eat them. So, you know, cushions are like gold. And there is a thing, if we take all the cushions and throw those out, it's just going to look very bare in there. But there are different things you could do. You could double up. You could buy 2 sets of cushions and have one in the room, take them out, leave them for 72 hours, put another set in. You could get a steam cleaner and clean cushions. So, you know, there are lots of different ways around each problem, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's sort of evaluating them all, working out what's practical and sort of doing that. You mentioned fogging machine there. I should mention that we did have a question about that come through ahead of the webinar as to whether you need a license to operate one. We don't know, but we will investigate that for that person, and I'll come back to you. But yeah, it's how extreme you sort of take the measures, isn't it, really? And at the end of the day, they've got to work for you so you can still feel comfortable providing that service. And I guess if you're then saying that you're going to do X, Y, and Z, you need to make sure you're confident and can do that, sort of not overstretch yourself, really.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. We had someone in the group, Julia, she runs a B&B in France, so she's been open a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah, interesting. And
she commented in the group and she said, actually, it's really not as frightening as you think it's going to be. It's business as usual with a bit of extra stuff in. And one of the things she said about her customers, she said, is they're just not thinking about it at the level of detail that we are. You know, those people who are coming away at this point, you know, Sue was talking about this 50% are just want to get away. They want to get away. Yeah. And the people who are really worried just aren't going to come. So, you know, it's focusing on just creating that wonderful B&B experience that we all do for those guests that do come away.
Yeah, that's really interesting, sort of learning about from a property that's already been open and that the fact that it's not as scary or difficult as perhaps they were thinking. I was speaking to a friend of mine, actually. He lives in Italy and he lives above a hotel. Part of the block is a hotel. Not huge, but he said, you know, as soon as that property, and it's in a touristy region, but as soon as it was able to open again, they were getting bookings left, right and centre, and they're sort of pretty full for the first couple of months now. So I think that pent-up demand is definitely there. I mean, some of the reading I've been doing during the week around it definitely suggests that, you know, searches for staycation on Google are through the roof. So I think once people get given a definitive date, not just the guest houses and the accommodation providers, but, you know, the general public at large as well, people will be booking. Not everyone, but there will be a lot of people wanting to book.
Yeah, I mean, my searches for B&B Shropshire and stuff on my Google Analytics and people coming to my website stayed steady actually throughout the whole crisis. And I've had a couple of bookings in the last week for, well, someone ran me up today for July, someone's booked for September. So, you know, I think people are just going to be, well, I hope people will be desperate to get away. Yeah.
And something that's come through in the past few weeks as well is that hopefully the season will potentially extend a little bit as well. So maybe, whereas a typical peak would be July, August, maybe that will stretch into September, even October now. It's interesting you said you had the September booking there.
Well, yeah, Shropshire, we do really well in September, sort of October time. Not last year, but last year, but I think the election sort of messed everything up. So, yeah, we've had a difficult time. We had, I think, the political situation affected bookings sort of October, November for us, and then it just rained from November till the end of February. And of course, we had flooding in Shropshire as well. So, you know, that you
definitely had some challenges.
I think we've had 4 winters. I don't know about 3 winters. We've had 4 winters here.
Very good. And that's great. It's really good feedback. And if there was sort of a few key takeaways for businesses listening today, in terms of getting themselves ready that they could do tomorrow, or what sort of things are you telling your sort of B&B Academy members?
Yeah. Well, first of all, don't panic, and then. I think a lot of people are really overwhelmed. Actually, it's really great that we're having all these guidelines sent to us, and you know, the self-catering guidelines and the Irish guidelines, and it's useful to see. But I think what I'm seeing in the group is lots of people have used the word overwhelm. There's just too much information coming through. And one of the things you do with overwhelm is you actually start to chunk things down into sizable bits of information. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, just maybe look at one room a day. Go around your guest room and say, what needs to change here? Do I need to take the cushions out? Which areas do I need to clean? You know, we've talked about the hot spots, so cleaning light switches, TV controls, and that sort of stuff. Maybe one day focus looking on your website, another day looking at how the dining room is going to work with social distancing, the thing. But break it down and just don't panic, and, you know, listen to what the B&B owner said in France. It's probably not going to be half as bad as we're making. Well, we think it's going to be. I get overwhelmed sometimes. I open a spreadsheet and just run to the fridge and empty it.
Brilliant. Really good tips, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today and coming on, and good luck when July comes and you start getting guests coming through. That's fantastic. I'm just going to throw to James. We don't have too much time left today, but just wanted to check if there's any questions that came.
So lots of practical questions. The key one, Karen, is around how do your ex-students join your Facebook group? So there are about 5 people request that. So how do they get access to that forum?
If they drop me an email, karenjthorn@yahoo.co.uk, and I will sort out getting you added.
So karenjthorn@yahoo.co.uk. Yeah. And then they get added to the Yellow Duck collection, which is, I think Kate mentioned it, is a map with over 85 of my ex-students on it, which is a public Facebook page. So again, we're trying to promote direct bookings. We've got over 800 people following the page now in a few weeks. So it's just amazing. Really pleased.
Can we ask where the Yellow Duck name came from?
I've always had a yellow duck as my avatar on social media, and it just came from there, really. So they're all a bunch of wonderful rubber ducks, yellow ducks.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Thanks so much again for coming on today, Karen. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Good stuff. Okay, so that sort of brings us to the end of proceedings for today. Before I let you all go, just need to star for eviivo Suite customers. There's another masterclass webinar on tomorrow. There's a guest presenter on that today. Tomorrow from Send in Blue, and it will be very much looking at communicating with customers, communicating with guests. It's come up a number of times today. What you need to be sending out now, and when you're getting bookings coming through in the future, what they'll be expecting to see, and what they're expecting to be updated on, and how to do that best practically and efficiently through eviivo Suite. So jump on that tomorrow. Thanks to all of you for, of course, tuning in today and all your questions. We seem to have had loads today, James, haven't we? Which has been brilliant. Continue to send them through to the events@eviivo.com email address, and we'll look at those through the course of the week. They're really good at helping us formulate these webinars, and also we'll try and get back to all of you on there as well. Lots of advice, as we mentioned, on the B&B Association website, but also very much on the eviivo.com/coronavirus pages. Lots of links there, and as soon as we get those UK hospitality guidelines as well, they'll be up on there, but the Fulcher Island ones are on there, the self-coaching ones, etc. So a good place to look. And then if you tuned in late or you missed any of the previous webinars,